Department has been awarded nearly $300,000 in grant funding to replace protective gear for every member of their department. Western Mass's reporter Taylor Smith joining us live in studio with more details about how this grant came about and what new updates we may see in their new gear. Taylor?
Well, David, the Amherst Fire Department has been slowly trying to replace older gear, but due to the hefty price tag, they have only been able to replace small quantities each year. But now with this grant funding, new sets of protective gear will soon be provided for all members of the department. Now these funds will be distributed by FEMA as part of their Assistance to Firefighter Grants program. This comes after an internal review of the department's protective gear from last year, where they found that approximately 65% of their turnout coats and trousers were past or nearing their 10-year service life. Now there was also an increased concern about current gear containing PFAS or forever chemicals, which are linked to increased risk of cancer and other health effects. Now with this grant funding, Amherst Fire will be purchasing 2 new sets of gear, 1 set of traditional structural turnout gear and 1 set of gear that can be worn for non-structure fire operations, such as medical calls, vehicle accidents, and most trainings. Now Amherst Fire just purchasing their first few sets this year. The department says they are looking forward to wearing their new non-structural gear, which is said to be very new to the industry. And I'm reporting live in the studio this morning, Taylor Smith, Western Mass News.
Sorry, thank you for that live.